Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is TWiT.
Bandwidth for TWiT specials is provided by Cashfly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is TWiT Live special number 312 for Wednesday, November 2nd, 2016. Virtual Reality Developers Conference 2016. This TWiT Live special is brought to you by Freshbooks, the super simple cloud accounting software that's giving thousands of freelancers and small businesses the tools to save time billing and get paid faster. Try it free at freshbooks.com/twit. Hey everyone, I'm Jason Howell, and I'm in San Francisco once again for yet another virtual reality conference. This is the VRDC, the Virtual Reality Developers Conference. It's put on by the folks that do the GDC, the Game Developers Conference, and this is the first annual event of its type. And it's actually, we're having a lot of fun, surrounded by all sorts of virtual reality technology. Obviously, they also have tons of talks that kind of dive deeper into the mechanisms behind what makes VR so special, forward-thinking concepts and ideas that's going to move the platform in the next direction over the next 5 to 10 years. But we are here to take a look at some of the really cool technology out on the floor. We got a couple of big rooms full of it. So let's dive right in and take a look. The biggest draw for virtual reality for me is the immersion into this new world, and flying through space is probably the pinnacle of that, at least in my point of view. I'm standing with Andrew, who is the lead designer of EVE Valkyrie. How's it going, Andrew?
Really good today.
First of all, I've never played EVE Valkyrie before sitting down here and kind of throwing on the PS4 goggles and flying through space. Got a little bit of that kind of motion sickness at first, because literally everywhere you look, you can spin around in full 360 degrees. You're completely unencumbered. What was it like kind of coming from conception to the first release, which I guess was on the Oculus Rift back in March, right?
Yeah, the Oculus launch in March was a tremendous milestone for us as a development team. We're a very small studio. There was about 28 of us at the start. There's maybe 40 of us now, but we're not growing any bigger than that. It's a nice tight team. So it was a huge challenge to launch. Well, our goal was always to deliver like a AAA shooter, and basically the production values, the sense of presence that you talk about, those nuanced controls, and that sensation of just really being there, and so it was a huge challenge to get to that milestone. If you ask anyone of the dev team, no one was happy when we launched. We were happy we got to the launch, but you always have that list of things that you wanted to be in the game at the time. And some of them we couldn't get in at that time, but this is the beauty of running Valkyrie as a game as a service, because when you buy a copy of Valkyrie, that's it kind of for the lifetime, and we're constantly updating the game. So every month we're bringing in patches and fixes, and then we have content drops which add new, cool new features to the game. So it's been a really cool ride. It's been an interesting summer, gearing up for PlayStation VR launch. So that was a huge moment again for us to be there for the launch of PSVR to support us, which is, it's like a natural fit for us for our game. I have a lot of friends that I game with. They're console boys, they're not, they don't have high-end PCs. So this really is the true kind of delivery of mass-market consumer VR, and it was great to be there at the launch. And it's great now to be out playing with my buddies, out there flying with my friends.
Sure, it really opens the playing field. It's like the true kind of crossover from something that's more for people who are very highly motivated because they enjoy the technology and they have the money to drop on it. Now it's open to more of a mainstream audience. So explain a little bit about kind of the challenge, or the kind of differences, I suppose, in the initial development for Oculus versus opening it up for this more kind of mainstream delivery with the console?
Well, I mean, in general, it's, we've made no sacrifices. It's an identical game on all of the platforms, even on Vive when we announced that that's coming this month, so we're shipping on Vive this month. It's exactly the same game, and it's got to be because of parity. We couldn't have anyone saying that, because you're on a particular platform, you had an advantage. So we're very careful that the game content, the mechanics, the features, they're all identical. So obviously there's different levels of optimization for different platforms, but it's weird. As a game designer, my job is quite easy. I kind of make the feature list, and then our technical directors, they work their magic, so I wouldn't want to talk for them about how easy it was, but or easy or hard. But it wasn't backbreaking. It was a really good development process. And the coolest moment as well for us was when we first went out there online. And you start in a place called the clone vat. So before you're shot out into space, you sit around in this vat. You'll have seen it when you played there. And all of the pilots kind of, appear, and they're your teammates, yeah? And so on PC, they've got a very distinctive look, and that's very different on PlayStation. So the PlayStation pilots are in kind of this white tinted suit with the blue LEDs. So it was a really amazing moment the first time we got in there, and we were like, oh my God, there's the PC players, there's the PS4 players all together sharing this game, So it's a dream come true, We really wanted to do that from day one, and we've delivered on it. So
that's great. Cool. What about the kind of the differences in hardware technology that's associated with the different platforms? Obviously, the Oculus, when you released this, it was the only real kind of control mechanism was a controller. Now they've got the Oculus Touch. HTC Vive has its own touch. They've all got kind of same but different types of approaches. How does that kind of complicate things?
It's fun. As a content creator, as a creator, you want to support everything that comes on. So you want to take those new toys and you want to use them and make some cool mechanics for your game. But we have to be very careful for that parity that I was talking about, that everyone can basically perform the same actions no matter what platform they're on. But the other thing is, Valkyrie, we're a seated experience. You're in a cockpit. And so we've created a game which is at its best, sat down with a gamepad, and it's immediate visceral thrills. Now, whether or not we support like the touch controllers further down the line is kind of another debate, because I'm really reluctant to put anything in there that's like a gimmick. So for argument's sake, if you wanted to get some space dust on the windshield and you use the controller to wash the window, that it's
the really important stuff.
Yeah, it wouldn't fit. It would feel like a novelty. So we'll probably look a little bit more into the calibration of the hands and what you could do within the cockpit, but I think the game itself and the mechanics and the features are pretty defined for Valkyrie as it is right now. I don't think we would ever do a situation where you like kind of interacting with the dashboard with hands, with virtual hands.
Unless I'm guessing there was a new kind of take, because EVE Valkyrie is one kind of direction that you've gone. You've gone EVE Gunjack as well. There could be other kind of stems off of the franchise that makes sense.
Absolutely, yeah, and it's such an evolving market. And when you look at the technology, the advances that have been made since even March this year are phenomenal. And it's at the minute it's just incredibly exciting. I liken it when I talk to my friends about the first time you got a mobile phone and you were like, what's this brick, this huge thing with an antenna on, and the devices we have in our pockets today, such a short window. And you think about that in terms of VR, where we're going to be within a year, within 2 years, within 5 years. That's it's incredibly exciting. So it's a good time to be making games.
And a good time to get in early on VR, because this really does feel like the beginning of something that's going to continue to evolve over the next however many years. And the earlier you get in, I'm sure you already know this, the earlier you get in on that, the more you stand to gain, both from experience and from just a successful business.
Completely agree. That it blew me away the first time I tried it. That was I'd made 2D games for like 8 years with Ubisoft, made some great AAA games, but this was a kind of a paradigm shift for me. I played it and I was like, oh my God, this is a whole new area in game design. It's really, really exciting. exciting time. It's like the Wild West almost, frontiers. We're going out there and we're trying lots, and sometimes we fail and sometimes we succeed, and that's really exciting to be part of something, to define the best practices that are going to shape the games of the future. Yeah, there's no greater place to be right now.
Been speaking with Andrew Williams, lead designer with, the EVE team, EVE Valkyrie, EVE Gunjack, and really had a great time playing the games. Thank you so much for talking with us.
Thanks a lot. Bye.
We're used to seeing headsets that are compatible, let's say, in like a cardboard sense with Google's VR efforts, and now, of course, Daydream is right around the corner. What we have here is a little bit different. It's tied into the Android world, but it has its own ecosystem. I'm standing here with Jennifer from Pico. So tell us a little bit about the Pico Neo. I mean, it's very different. It's a standalone headset with a controller, but all the like internal like hardware is built into the controller. Tell us a little bit about that.
Right, so the good thing about Pico VR that sets it apart from other HMDs is that it's really light. It only weighs 300 grams. And the reason for that, even though it's a standalone, is because all of the hardware is actually in the controller. So we're talking the battery, we're running a Snapdragon 820 processor, and all of the hardware is actually in the controller. So if you feel that, it's actually got quite a little bit of heft to it, right?
Yeah, oh yeah.
Compared to the headset that actually feels quite light. And this is to increase comfort of the user, right? We want to have a high usability to open it to the consumer market. So the benefit of this is, not only is it easy to use, but it's also just extremely comfortable, more so than having something really heavy on your face.
What about the screen technology inside the viewer? Because I noticed, I put it on, things look pretty sharp when you throw the goggles on.
We're running two 1K AMOLEDs in there, and so the resolution is pretty on par with most mobile HMDs.
It's running Android, but it's not necessarily, let's say, a cardboard viewer or like a step up comparable to, say, Samsung Gear VR. You've got your own ecosystem going on here. Explain that a little bit.
Well, we're based on Android 6.0, but Pico itself actually does the hardware and the software. So we're running our own Pico ecosystem, and that's looking at a Pico Store, Pico Apps, Pico Videos. We have game development within Pico too, and we contract with individual developers too. So we're really just running a whole new ecosystem, and we're looking to port over with possible, other games, but we're not sure who yet.
What's the target market? Like, have you already launched this in any markets? Have kind of clients kind of buying into the technology that you're offering here? What is that market?
Well, the SDK is actually available in China, so our presence here today is to connect with the North American market. We have a lot of, it's like very, very consumer friendly, so we have a lot of people say like it's really fun, I'm really enjoying it, it's good for kids. But surprisingly, we also got a lot of good feedback from the business sector, so a lot of people say like I could use this in my virtual showroom, sit people down in my office and have them walk through it. So we actually have a lot of good feedback from professional companies too. So it's kind of aiming to be an all-in-one consumer device.
And so would you then go inside the Pico Neo world and you would have a marketplace accessible inside the viewer with all the content that has been made primarily, specifically for this platform, maybe ported over from cardboard efforts or whatever, but you'd have your own marketplace accessible from in here to purchase or download or whatever?
Right, exactly. And so we go Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, or you can just do uploads. And the market, it's like a standard VR marketplace. You go in and you can download different apps or different videos or different experiences that you want to play.
Well, I can tell from my time playing around with the Pico Neo, the controller, the whole experience feels very kind of solid, very tight. Like you said, the headset, super light and comfortable. Everything looked great to my eyes, very responsive, moving around, not a bunch of detectable latency or anything like that. So I really like what I'm seeing. Thank you so much for taking the time to show this to me.
Yeah, thank you. Have a great day.
If you've got a big, beefy VR setup, you're going to need a big, beefy computer to run it, basically. And that's what Zotac is kind of all about. I'm standing here with Kevin from Zotac. How's it going, Kevin?
It's great. How are you doing?
Doing awesome. So you got a little bit of a range of PCs that are designed with VR in mind, and it really kind of seems to shrink down, at least what I think of when I think of like a desktop PC, let alone one that is powerful enough to power VR. Tell us a little bit about the machines that you've done here.
So something different about what we do is we actually try to stray a little bit from the traditional PC setup and turn it into a much smaller form factor. So we have the entry range, the mid range, and the high range mini PC here, and that's powered by the AMD RX 480, the NVIDIA GTX 1070, as well as the GTX 1080. So if the EN 1070 was our mid range, the difference is going to be our EN 1080 being the high range, and that was announced during our 10-year anniversary on October 25th. And that one is an Intel i7 backed by GTX 1080. So you're looking at the high-end line of our mini PCs. And those are both liquid-cooled with our custom solution. So it keeps everything pretty quiet and pretty cool. And the other one that you mentioned earlier is our ERX 480. And that's more of the entry level at the sub-1,000 price point. And that's using the AMD Radeon RX 480 graphics.
How important do you think it is for the growth of VR as kind of a new frontier in gaming and immersion experience for machines like this to exist? Because I feel like many people might be interested in VR, but they get tripped up on the fact that it's kind of complicated right now, right? Like it's multiple things. Unless you happen to have a PS4, which makes it really easy. Just get the PSVR, plug it in, and you're good to go. When it comes down to like speccing machines in order to match the power that's needed for HTC Vive, Oculus, whatever, it can be kind of a challenge for the mainstream. Do you think that going this approach, making something that kind of looks a little bit more like a consumer product as opposed to a chunky computer, do you think that's the right way to go?
Oh, definitely. Something that's more of a finished goods, I think, is more readily available and readily understandable by people. So something like any one of our mini PCs that come with the full Windows 10, everything ready to go, the memory, the storage, everything upgraded. All you need to do is put something, for example, in the sense of HTC Vive, you just get Steam and you install Steam VR. You're pretty much good to go after you set it up. Yeah. And
are these machines kind of created with future-proofing in mind, things that might come along down the line, enough expandability to be able to match those needs as it goes forward?
Well, our mini PCs are expandable in the sense of the memory and the storage. Okay. But in terms of CPU and graphics, we don't necessarily allow that, or it's not meant for the average consumer to do it, just because we do have custom cooling designs on them. If you just change it out without knowing really what you're doing, you're not going to have a functioning PC after.
You're going to have a bad day.
Yeah, pretty much.
I mean, you mentioned cooling. That is one thing about these machines. There's a lot going on under the hood, but they stay pretty cool. You've got that nailed.
Pretty cool, yeah. And especially with the liquid cooling, we haven't had any issues with the heating on that. Yeah.
All right, so where should people go to find out more about this, the machines that you're offering?
Just go to www.zotac.com. That's ZOTAC. And also you can check it out on Newegg and Amazon. Yeah.
All right, been speaking with Kevin with Zotac. Thanks for showing me these awesome machines and showing me something that I might just have to get for my own VR needs at home. Thank you.
No problem.
All right, we've got a lot more to dive into, but before we do that, let's thank the sponsor of today's episode. This episode of TWiT Live Specials is brought to you by Freshbooks, the super simple cloud accounting software. It can be a big struggle to race against the clock to wrap up your various projects, all while trying to tackle endless amounts of paperwork. And that, my friends, is the world of freelance work. It's not a whole lot of fun all the time, but it's challenging. That's a big challenge right there, right? But our friends at Freshbooks believe that the rewards are worth it. Freshbooks has launched the all-new version of their cloud accounting software. It's been redesigned from the ground up and custom built for exactly the way you work. You can get ready for the simplest way to be more productive and organized. More importantly, you'll get paid quickly, because that's really what it's all about at the end of the day. The all-new FreshBooks is not only ridiculously easy to use, it's also packed full of powerful features. You can create and send professional-looking invoices in less than 30 seconds. You can add your own logo or color scheme so that your invoice reflects your own brand. When you email a client an invoice, FreshBooks can show you whether they've actually seen it, so you know. So you can set up online payments with just a couple of clicks, get paid in up to 4 days faster. There's also a super handy deposit feature, so you can invoice for a payment upfront when you're kicking off a project. Freshbooks is offering a 30-day unrestricted free trial to our audience. To claim it, just go to freshbooks.com/twit and enter TWiT in the How Did You Hear About Us section. Start your 30-day free trial today, and we thank Freshbooks for their support. All right, we have Morph 3D right behind us, so why don't we dive right in and talk to them a little bit about their technology. Let's go. When you're in VR, you feel like you're living in another world and that you are a certain person, but there's this whole layer of identity that gets broken up from experience to experience. In some ways, you have to like rebuild it from the ground up in many ways. And I'm standing here with Morph 3D's Berkeley. How's it going, Berkeley?
I'm awesome. Thanks, man.
Yeah, it's good to talk with you about this. So tell us a little bit about Morph 3D's kind of vision of a persistent avatar.
What's happening right now is a very fractured, disjointed experience. It's not cool to have to recreate yourself on every platform, and it's also not just not cool, but it's also really, really hard to do. Like, most people have a hard time creating unique avatars that reflect who they want to be, and so that's what our mission is to build that platform and that tool set and that ecosystem of content and technology that really helps people express themselves, lets them stand out if they want to stand out, or fit in if they want to fit in. And then whatever configuration you come up with, or whoever, as you start to find your virtual identity, we want that identity to persist across platforms.
Yeah, tell me a little bit about the partnerships, because that's a big part of what you've got showing off here, and I'm sure that's kind of part of what we're looking at behind us. But tell us a little bit about your partnership with High Fidelity.
High Fidelity found us. They're like, hey, we need some really good avatars. We know you guys have a lot of experience doing this. We're a company that has about 15 years in character creation. And we've got this awesome ecosystem of artists and artist network making content for this dynamic character system that we've had. And then we've since ported it over to VR, and when they shared with them our vision and collaborated with them about what might be a meaningful experience, and over the last few months we've kind of figured out and cracked that code as to like, how do we actually bake out these avatars and send them to High Fidelity, because we're going from one platform to another, from one game engine to a different game engine. And how do we make this work?
I think what's interesting about the partnership with High Fidelity, and you mentioned this as we were talking a little bit before, is that Philip Rosedale, who is basically the man that kind of envisioned and created Second Life. Like, when you think of Second Life and the legacy that has over however many years it's been around, in many ways it was doing very VR-like sort of things, as far as like this immersive world with an identity, a shared identity, an avatar that travels through this world that represents your personality. It seems like this type of relationship seems like the perfect fit for what you guys are trying to do.
Oh, absolutely. In fact, it's been really cool collaborating with Philip and his team. When you hear him talk about like what he's been trying to do for the better part of his adult life, like he's really passionate about this space. He's really passionate about creating, the new world, the metaverse, and integral to that, he acknowledges his identity and how important it is to be able to feel like you want to be you when you're in virtual reality, and so
you also want to be somebody else sometimes too.
but that, I mean we've done some cool interviews, and we were doing some cool media stuff with Philip, and like in these interviews, like when you watch him, like he says, I feel that the virtual persona is your real persona. More so, like, this is maybe not me. More like what I am in virtual reality could be or should be the real me, because I finally get to express myself and present myself to the world the way I want to be seen, not what the genetic lottery was, right?
How developers like the SDK that's kind of driving this, how do you bring people in? How can people get involved?
So the best way for us to distribute our avatars is if developers choose to integrate our API onto their platform, but that's a little bit more involved than the other way that we can do things, which is to bake out our avatar, bake out your avatar specifications for the platform that you want to go to. So that's a good starting point, and that's what we did with High Fidelity, because again, we're like kind of like a cat and a dog situation where they are not Unity-based, we're Unity-based. They're on a proprietary platform or engine that they're building out. And so like, how do we get this content to talk? And so we have like a very sophisticated baking out process that we can send it to all sorts. We can redefine our avatar for the definition that's necessary, requisite for the platform that it's targeting. People integrate our API. If developers integrate our API into their platform, then the avatar is not only persistent, but it becomes highly dynamic in the sense that if you show up in a social VR situation, you're like hanging out with your crew, and you ended up doing like a impromptu dungeon crawl, and you need to look, and someone needs to become the ranger, and someone needs to be like the thief, right? Like you can change your wardrobe on the fly, or maybe you're going to a toga party or something, and like you can make those changes, or someone gives you a piece of cake and you gain weight, or like you run really fast for a long time and you shrink down. Like the system's highly dynamic and very flexible. I mean, we can bring that over to your platform or a developer's platform if they integrate the API. So it's easy to get started because we can just do bakeouts, but API is the coolest way, and I'm excited for that to start happening.
I've been speaking with Berkeley with Morph 3D and get a chance to play around with it as well. I love when I get to throw on the goggle and check out the experience for myself. Thanks for talking with us today.
Right on, man. Thanks.
Sometimes when you're in the immersive world, you want your body to feel the vibration of the experience and not just have it be a feast for your eyes and your ears. That, I believe, is probably at the core of what Telepod is all about. I'm standing here with Roy from Telepod, the VR 4D system for VR immersion, as it says there. Thank you for talking with us, Roy.
You know, those big words there, but basically it's called the Telepod ball chair. Okay. And we're actually from a company called EJ, which has a brand called VR Cruise. What we're trying to do here is give a canned VR immersive experience and in a somewhat casual, I guess, environment. And so the people are seeing the VR content, which is synced up with the audio to give vibrations or whatever that comes with the scene of the particular segment that you're looking at.
So, I mean, I was sitting in there and, you know, as you hear music and, you know, especially the low frequency response, I mean, your entire body shakes because I imagine this, you can tell me the technology that's driving it, but I imagine there are some pretty nice sized speakers inside that are rattling as you're sitting in the pod.
As a matter of fact, the speakers are not built in there.
Okay.
It's actually, the sonic portion is built into a little device there. It can also build in speakers to give you the full experience together with the audio without that package. Either way, whatever, we're still in the infancy. We can cater to whatever presentation that you have for a VR experience. Okay. So anyone of them fine.
Okay, so then explain to me a little bit the market for one of these. Like, I could see, you know, from a casual perspective, I could see people who are really getting like head over heels into virtual reality, getting some sort of a kind of a home furniture piece of furniture like this. But is that who you're targeting, or are you targeting more kind of like commercial markets?
Well, VR right now is still, as we all know, still in the infancy. And basically, the VR experience is very personal at this point in time. So we do need to create something where they can fully enjoy the experience in your own private room. But at the same time, what we're offering is, for example, controlling the VR experiencing for up to 100 people at a time, just like you would watch a movie. So we can build in the sonic experience into your seats at home and sync up the content. That's all going to be developed as we go along, I'm sure.
Yeah, I could almost envision kind of like a VR theater where there are many pods all lined up, and you find your pod, you sit down, you throw on the goggles, and you get the whole experience.
You got so many home theaters right now already doing part of it, right? So there's no reason why VR can't do the same thing.
Can people who are interested in picking one up, or for whatever they have, is that possible right now, or where are you at?
No, not at this point in time. And a matter of fact, I mean, the technology is actually very simple. And right now we're at a stage where we all have to develop the VR experience together as a group. So we'll be more than happy to talk with everybody else to bring the experience home.
Where can people go to find more information about this?
They would have to come to our VR Cruise site, which is just up there a little bit, actually a lot in Japanese because we're based out of Tokyo. But we're working on it.
Roy, with this awesome Telepod technology, thank you so much for talking with us today.
Welcome.
I've spent a lot of time in virtual worlds, not as much in the augmented world unless you consider Google Glass. It's sort of augmented. This is next world stuff. It's the Daquiri smart helmet. I'm standing here with Dr. Rajay Kumar. How's it going?
Doing well.
I put on the helmet and I saw a whole lot of context around everything that was surrounding me. That's kind of at the heart of augmented reality. Tell me a little bit about the Daquiri Smart Helmet.
Yeah, the Daquiri Smart Helmet is a device that helps make workers more productive and safer. And we do that through a couple different ways. One is augmented work instructions that can guide workers to do the safest and most efficient process to get something repaired or even inspected. We even have a thermal camera built into the helmet so you can catch something that may be failing way before something catastrophic happens, like an explosion or a fire. So that way we're really motivated to improve worker safety.
Yeah, and I saw the example of the thermal detection and kind of the on-screen guides. I mean, everywhere you looked, it was kind of like the Predator view. If you've ever seen the movie Predator, where you see the blobs, the human shapes, but it was super cool stuff. I could see how this would be, designed for safety. You've created everything that's kind of going on under the hood. What kind of challenges did that pose for you to kind of get from the starting point up to where you've been able to bring this technology?
Yeah, when we first started out, Daquiri was just a pure software company, so a lot of the challenges were around, understanding hardware and what was out there in the market. And also there were challenges associated with, understanding what the needs were for the industrial workers. So what we did is we went out there, we had some contacts in industry and made some more through the help of a lot of other people out there, like our investors and such. And with that, we were able to understand what the workers needed and what was expected for them in their jobs, and that gave us a lot of insight on what they could do. For instance, we were talking a lot about using gestures as a way to interact with some of the augmented experiences, but what we found is that the workers need their hands free, for instance. So we did everything with gaze and head-based tracking and movement like that.
Yeah, Intel has some really kind of interesting developments around the RealSense depth sensor. Would you say that's kind of critical to what you've been able to pull off here?
It's a very important part of what we do with the Daquiri Smart Helmet. A lot of what we do, of course, is augmented reality, and the Intel depth sensing camera is helpful to kind of understand environments that we're looking into. But most of our work is done actually with just a color camera with a wide-angle lens.
But this, your work in this area kind of started well before, let's say, technologies like HoloLens came along. How has that evolved? And I don't know, was this even possible in as elegant of a way even 2 years ago?
We've seen a lot of changes in hardware, and it's we've been trying to get the latest and greatest in our devices. 2 years ago, it was somewhat possible, but we've seen with the changes happening recently that we're able to do more now than we could have done back then, for sure.
Certainly progressed pretty rapidly. So tell us a little bit about what the user sees. Obviously this is the example that you have is you have this kind of like this work environment that maybe the user that's wearing the helmet may or may not know exactly what they're looking at, so they can get this sort of assistance through the technology. Explain kind of the use case for this.
Definitely, yeah. So we have something called augmented work instructions, and these can be created using our web-based authoring tool, where it's kind of like a what you see is what you get sort of interface, and it's very easy to create and deploy experiences. And when you have those deployed onto a piece of equipment, you'll start to see annotations right on top of it. So these can be things like arrows telling you where to look at. It could be a gauge that they want you to read. It could have like an indicator pointing you to it. It can give you notifications like telling you, hey, you need to order this new part here. Things of that nature, yeah.
And is this technology, can people kind of bring it into their environments now and put it to work? Like what is the reach for people who are interested in getting their hands on this type of technology?
Yeah, we're definitely already deploying it in certain environments. We work with companies like Siemens, Topcon, Vinci, and steel mills, even like KSP Steel. So companies can definitely already use our equipment. We have a lot of partnerships going on at the present. And with the helmet, we do provide some level of support where we can help you create some initial applications. But again, our 4D Studio is probably the best and easiest way to make your own.
Very cool stuff. I love the idea of being able to take an environment and add context to it. Obviously, that's the beauty of augmented reality. Augmented reality, virtual reality, very different things. Do you see a context where virtual reality works in the same spectrum of what you're doing here, or you really need that real world environment to kind of tie it into?
We're mainly focused on the real-world environment. The only time I'd see them sort of having some overlap is when it comes to things like simulations and training in certain situations. But yeah, they're very different. One thing that we can do that's very hard to do in virtual reality is provide this kind of technology that can actually help save workers' lives. With our thermal camera, you can catch problems way before they turn into catastrophes like explosions. We can really improve worker safeness, and that really motivates us here at Daquiri.
All right, so the Daquiri Smart Helmet, Dr. Rajay Kumar, thank you so much for showing me the helmet and taking time to talk with us.
Great meeting you, Jason. Thank you very much.
And now it's time to put your eyes to work, not just from looking around, but actually using your eyeballs as a control mechanism inside VR, which is really cool stuff. That's what Fove is all about. I'm standing here with Lachlan, CTO and co-founder of Fove. How's it going?
Really good, thanks. A bit tired, but it's great.
I imagine so. We've had a long day. I'm sure you've had a long day talking people through the experience of what they're seeing here. This is not only you not only have the layer of going into a new world when you put on the goggle, but you're also kind of extending it into this like mental gymnastics of using your eyeballs as a control mechanism. Explain a little bit kind of why you got into this space and how it improves the experience.
So at the very first time when I decided to enter this space, Yuka and I were having a conversation about narration in gaming and storytelling and emotional content. So we felt that there's sort of a bit of a void in games where characters are very two-dimensional. Even if they're rendered in 3D, they don't respond to your gaze. They don't understand where you're looking. They don't understand empathy, or they can't return anything. There's this sort of wall there, basically. And we wanted to make the first kind of experiences possible to actually bypass that. So the very first idea that we had was to make, say, a gamepad-based experience with eye contact and things like that. But I thought the technical challenges at the time, the processing power at the time available wasn't sufficient. So I'm like, why don't we just try tethered VR? That's going to be much more interesting, and we can maybe make an exhibition of this, put it in a gallery somewhere and have this cool experience. But then as we started developing this, more people are saying hey, you should make this. This is really cool. And so we kept on going, basically spurred on by people around us, and got investment, moved to Tokyo, did a bunch of stuff. So.
You got into this early on. You were telling me right before we started this interview that, you pretty much started kind of at least the initial, work on this idea before Oculus even hit Kickstarter.
Yeah, so that's the interesting thing for us. I was playing around with an old headset that I had lying around. I stuck a sensor on it for motion tracking, and I thought, hey, this is really cool. The technology's nearly here. And then bang, this massive Kickstarter comes up, and we're like, hey, the technology is really here. And so it was kind of inspiring to see that. And then we realized it didn't have to be limited to a very small field of view or whatever the current technology was. We could make our own stuff and push the boundary as far as we dared, basically. So, and that's where we are now.
So I imagine, some of the secret sauce is probably, held close to the vest. But what exactly is enabling this kind of eye tracking? Tracking the eyeball, the iris everywhere you look. There's a control happening where your viewfinder or whatever you happen to be doing inside the game follows your eye. How are you doing that exactly?
So we do that with a little bit of optics, sort of. I guess it's the kind of thing you'd see in Pepper's Ghost and stuff like that. We have a beam splitter, we have cameras facing into the headset, bounce straight back out and look at your eye, and then we just have some pretty good image processing and mathematical modeling behind that to get it to work not only precisely but extremely quickly and without overloading the CPU or anything. So we're a very lightweight analysis on the eye movement that's extremely fast and accurate. And so most of our secret sauce is, of course, in the software. The optical stuff is very straightforward. It's basically we have some illuminators to light up the eye. We, of course, balance that to the bare minimum necessary. We run our cameras right now at 120 hertz. They're capable of going quite a bit faster than that, but we figure it's a pretty good balance. We wanted to make our headset from the start capable of foveated rendering, which is something we didn't touch on before. We said everything was narrative based to start with, but as we looked at the space, we started to understand what was really required for eye tracking technology to really take off in the space, and that was to be able to use your gaze for post-processing image effects like simulated depth of field or real depth of field. When we get our hands on light field displays, we're going to have a much more realistic depth of field even than we have here. Because right now our screen is held at a fixed depth, so we are still tricking the visual system a little bit. But even still, this trick feels a lot better than without.
And when I understand what you're saying. When you introduce the technology behind something like Litro or whatever, that light field technology that actually shifts the focus dynamically and can track that. I mean, that's like that's next phase stuff as far as VR is concerned, and extending that experience.
We could link in with Litro right now. We could have an experience just like the foveated rendering demo you saw then, where you could sort of sort through the depth layers that they have and like dynamically change your focus depending on what you're looking at. Of course, there'd need to be like a little bit of extra like sort of pre-processing there to make it like fully robust, but it could totally work.
Yeah, and explain a little bit about the kind of the storytelling aspect. Obviously, I played games, and I will say that I probably performed better in this shooter that you put in front of me than I ever would on a hand controller, just because those analog controls can sometimes be super, super jumpy, so way too sensitive, let's say. But with my eyes, it was natural.
Parallax error as well.
Parallax error, and then, but then you also said that this could play a big role in storytelling.
Yeah, so not only just for input and control. Input and control is like the no-brainer for this. Like you can just use it to turn your guns quickly. You can even refine that with the gamepad or anything. You can do all of these things. UI, UX, great. But the real magic is going to happen with storytelling. So the characters are aware, like eye contact, basic things like this. You can return the gaze or you can look away and the character can be like offended or, look, if you're looking at something, maybe they can provide some information and say, oh, hey, yeah, this thing, I've seen that before. It's an artifact that we picked up, blah, 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 blah. And, they can prompt you and things like this. And the game designers can be 100% sure that the user looked and saw that event. So, for example, if there's an ambush going to happen, but the user saw them ahead of time and the ambush still happens, I mean, I get frustrated when that happens. I'm like, what is this? Man, I saw that guy coming. I should have shot him. And they can know that you were looking over there, so the ambush has to come from over there. And they can dynamically shift the position. And the player's like, aye. And they will actually feel like they legitimately got owned, even though we're completely cheating and just teleporting the enemy to where they weren't looking right then.
Right.
Yeah.
Very, very cool stuff. So, explain a little bit about the platform. Like, who can get in on this? What's your approach there?
So we want to keep our platform as open as possible. So we're basically on OpenVR and OSVR. So basically anything that's running on Steam, anything that's compatible with a gamepad will run with a Fove. And by the way, we have some other advantages as well. Our screen is the highest resolution on the PC market.
It looked really, really good.
It's 40% more pixels than HTC or Oculus CV1. So, we can play existing content. We have our own compositor and our own SDK for people who want to make any kind of experience. You can link into our SDK, you can link into OpenVR, you can link into OSVR, you can link into OpenVR through OSVR. There's all of these pathways that lead to the same thing. So we're very open. The other thing is our API is separable as well, so you can have just the VR stuff running through whatever. It's like Steam VR. And then you can have our eye tracking stuff running through our own SDK that's running in the background. There's multiple sources of information that you can take. It's all there, it's all exposed, and developers can just take whatever suits them and put it into their system. To make that easy, we have Unity plugin, Unreal plugin from the start, and also a new player in the game, Genko. They're a Japanese game engine company. They grabbed one of our headsets and they support us now too, which is really awesome. So, yeah. We're looking at supporting more engines like, Crytek, like a bunch of whatever we can get our hands on, we want to support and have plugins with. The main thing, though, is our SDK is extremely easy to use. So anyone who's like, I want to use this now, they can just drop it in and get started. Probably, if they know what they're doing, they're going to be up and running in less than an hour with their game engine. So.
And then anyone who really wants to get in on this hardware right now, they can do that, right? You announced that pre-orders are open.
Yeah, so pre-orders are available right now, and that they're for $549 this week, and they'll go up to $599 after. But so be quick. They will ship in January, most likely. So we're shipping to our Kickstarter backers first. We're committed to that. They'll take the first lots. We're shipping in about batches of 500 at first, and we're going to ramp up as demand, piles in. So yeah, please support us. Please get a dev kit from us and see what you can do with it. So
it's really cool. I love getting the chance to kind of explore new dimensions, especially in the world of VR, these new control mechanisms. And this was very different from anything that I've checked out so far, and very natural. And that's what I think I love the most about it. It just really, it's as easy as looking at something. It's as simple as that.
Some would say the experience is eye-opening, but I hate making puns like that.
That was very good. Some would say that. I'm surprised I didn't come up with that because puns are my life. CTO and co-founder of Fove, Lachlan, thank you so much for talking with us today and showing us.
Thank you very much. Cheers. Thank you very much.
All right, my legs are feeling a little tired now, and that's because I've been doing a lot of walking, checking out all of these different experiences. My eyes are feeling tired too, because when you put on those goggles time and time again, you just kind of can't help it. But it's so much fun. I love these virtual reality conferences. VRDC, this is the first annual event for VRDC, and I know they're going to continue it because I would say it's a pretty darn big success, and I've had a lot of fun here. Hope you have too. You can catch me all over the TWiT network on the other shows that I do, Tech News Today, all about Android App Arena, sometimes the new screensavers, and sometimes these specials, which can be found at twit.tv/specials. My name is Jason Howell. We'll see you next time.